Hey guys, it's Adrienne from Wanderlust Creamery, and I'm here to make a recipe from my new cookbook, The World of Ice Cream. Today we're making caramelized milk chocolate with plantain brittle. This is essentially a chocolate ice cream, but what makes it special is we're using caramelized milk. What that adds is like a salty, umami, buttery back note to regular milk chocolate ice cream. And then we spice it up with some plantain brittle. So first, let's start on our caramelized milk. So essentially what we're making is dulce de leche ice cream, but we're turning that ice cream into a milk chocolate recipe. So first we're gonna start with some milk. I like to use the best quality milk I can find. For me in Southern California, that is Strauss. You want to use, I don't think organic really matters. What I like about Strauss is that it's grass-fed, and that makes all the difference flavor-wise. So we're going to use 375 milliliters of really good milk. And 330 milliliters of really good cream. Again, I'm using grass-fed cream. Ended up being everything. And to this, we're gonna add some sugar. Gonna add some dry milk powder. We like to add dry milk powder as an extra form of protein. It binds all the water in our mix. So we're gonna add some sweetened condensed milk. This is also a form of protein that is going to bind water in our mix, and it's also a form of sugar. And we're cooking this in an instant pot. It's going to caramelize not just the milk proteins, but it's also going to caramelize the sugar in the milk, which is lactose. And that's responsible for that creamy toasted milk flavor. Kind of what you get in condensed milk, but probably 50 times the flavor. And to this, we're gonna add just a little bit of baking soda. What baking soda is gonna do, it's gonna bring down the pH of our mixture, which will help browning. And I'm just gonna mix this to dissolve all the solids. And then once that's mixed, we're gonna add this to 2 canning jars. You wanna get some jars with this kind of lid. It's a canning lid. This goes here and this goes here. And what that's gonna do is it's gonna act as a mini pressurizer within our Instapot. And you're gonna put the lid on not too tight, because if you put it on too tight, this thing's gonna explode. You're gonna have a mess. You just want it what they call finger tight. And finger tight is literally as tight as you can do it with the tip of your fingers. Your Instapot should come with a little basket. You're gonna set this down and you're gonna put these onto the basket. The reason you need a basket is you don't want this touching the bottom of the pot. It's gonna make it explode. Also, you don't want these touching each other either. You want it to be as separate as possible without touching the walls and at the same time not touching the bottom. And then you're gonna add about 2 inches of water to the bottom of this, which will be just below the basket. So we're gonna put the lid on this and we're gonna pressure cook it on high for 2.5 hours, and we'll be right back. It's been about 2.5 hours. We've let this cool and the pressure has naturally dissipated. So it's time to check on our dairy. And yeah, look. We got dulce de leche, but liquid. And now we're gonna turn it into chocolate ice cream. So we're gonna return it back to our tall canister. And you'll see that some of it has coagulated. It might seem chunky, but don't worry about that. It's just the milk proteins cooked. It's gonna get all blended, don't worry. Okay, and to this mixture, we're going to add a little bit more sugar. This time we're using glucose. Glucose is half as sweet as sugar, but it has all the anti-freezing properties that sugar has and is necessary for ice cream. So adding that, and we're adding a little bit of stabilizer, tarragon. we're gonna bloom our cocoa powder. So I'm using Dutch cocoa powder, and we're adding a little bit of hot water to this, just 3 tablespoons. And the reason I like to do this is because it really does bring out the flavor when you add hot water, kind of like tea. I feel like the boiling water really brings out the subtle nuances of this cocoa. And we're gonna blend this till everything's dissolved. And I can already smell that there's something different about this ice cream. It's not just chocolate, there's another flavor, and it comes from the toasted proteins in the milk. It's almost like a shortbread flavor or smell. So we're putting this back into heat because I need to activate my stabilizer. The reason I chose Terra Gum as a stabilizer, because it hydrates at such a low temperature versus all the other stabilizers. So it's gonna be really quick, probably about 5-10 minutes. We're gonna heat this till it reaches 165. Now our base has reached 165, which means the stabilizer has been activated. We're gonna pour this back into our cylindrical tall mixing vessel. And I'm gonna blend this up again for at least 2 minutes. What we're gonna do is basically re-homogenize everything, break up all the fat so they're all equal size, and we're gonna cool it down before we put it in our ice bath. Again, it smells so buttery and toasty, like shortbread, but it's something different. Now that it's cooled down a bit, it's still hot. I'm gonna add some semi-sweet chocolate, just a little bit. That's gonna melt down. So we're re-homogenizing this, and by homogenization, I mean we're breaking down all the fats so they're equal in size. And that's really important to ice cream because ice cream is all about physical structure. It's about the perfect physical structure of fats, protein, frozen water, ice crystals, unfrozen water. And it's all about the meltdown. A lot of people don't realize that the taste of ice cream comes from the meltdown. So we want to do everything we can to make sure that structure is as uniform and perfect as possible. Okay, so now that this is cooled down just a little bit, we're gonna put it in our ice bath. I like to strain it when I'm making dairy bases just to make sure I don't have any lumps of uncooked stabilizer or coagulated proteins. Again, it's all about the structure. This is another step to ensure that the structure is as perfect and uniform as possible. And once this cools down to room temperature, we're gonna put it in an airtight container and store it in our fridge for about 12 hours overnight. This is called aging. What happens during aging is the proteins hydrate, all the fats semi-crystallize. It's gonna make for a more uniform air formation when we churn the ice cream. It's also gonna ensure that our base is extra cold. The reason why we want it extra cold before we turn it into ice cream is the faster that you can churn your ice cream into solid ice cream, the smaller the ice crystals will be, which means the smoother the ice cream will be as well. We're gonna put this in the fridge for 12 hours to let it age, and we'll be right back. Okay, so we're back. This is aged in the fridge for about 12 hours. Just pouring this in. I can see that it's thickened up overnight. There we go. And we're just gonna turn this on the lowest churn speed because we want really dense, low overrun ice cream. And we're gonna make it as cold as possible. And we'll be back. So our ice cream is churning. It's gonna be about 20-30 minutes while we're waiting for that. So while we're waiting, we're gonna make our mix-in, which is caramelized plantain brittle. I'm gonna take this bag of sweet plantain chips and I'm gonna crush it in my hands. You could also use a rolling pin. I like to open it just a little bit to release some air while I crush it up. And you don't want straight up dust, but you do want fine crumbs. And then we're gonna heat up a saucepan, a skillet. And we're gonna melt some sugar. I'm gonna add in a third at a time. And you don't wanna stir this with a spatula or a spoon just because it's gonna get sticky and messy. You just wanna swirl it around. And we're looking for a dark amber caramel. Once the sugar's melted and it's nice and dark, we're gonna add more sweetened condensed milk. And we're also gonna add just a few tablespoons of butter. And I'm just gonna stir this up. Don't worry, at first it's gonna look like it's not mixing up, but if you keep stirring, it'll eventually emulsify and become homogeneous, like so. And then we're gonna take this off the heat, keep stirring. And once it's all combined like that, we're gonna take our sheet pan with parchment. We're gonna add all of our plantain crumbs in there. And you're just gonna stir to coat. And we're just gonna spread it out onto our pan and let it cool and harden. And as it hardens, you wanna separate it into small pieces. If it doesn't, that's fine. Once it hardens, we're gonna break it up apart anyway. So I'm just gonna let this cool. The ice cream's churning. We're gonna take a little break and I'll be right back. So I got this idea for the plantain brittle because in South America, they actually do this thing where they take burnt sugar, condensed milk, some butter, and then they throw cornflakes in there. And they kind of flatten it into a sheet pan, kind of like Rice Krispie treats here. And then once that's done, they slice it and you eat it kind of like Rice Krispie treats. I decided to do the same thing, but with plantain chips. Okay, so now our ice cream is basically ready to go. It's still churning, so while it's the last few seconds of churning, I'm gonna add some mixing in. Okay, and now our ice cream is done. And again, you want to work as fast as possible, so we're going to scrape this down into our pan. And then, if you want, you can top it off with a little more plantain brittle. And we're gonna pop this back into the freezer for about 4 hours until it's hardened and ready to scoop. It's been 4 hours. I could wait longer, but I don't want to. Our caramelized milk chocolate with plantain ice cream is done. I've got a little cup with some water. Doesn't have to be hot water, just any water to dip my ice cream scooper in. You wanna shake that off to remove any excess water, and we're gonna scoop into a chilled sundae bowl. Look at that. Ooh. Delicious. I'm actually gonna top it off with a little bit of extra plantain brittle right on top there. It's milk chocolate ice cream, extra milky, but like I said, there's like a little bit of a hint of a buttery, salty, almost umami flavor from the caramelized milk proteins. Crunchy, salty plantains, really good. You can find this recipe in my new cookbook, The World of Ice Cream. So many other recipes, great tips, a whole chapter on the science if you want to geek out with me. Be sure to pick up a copy.